Cardinal being more initiating, getting things started, able to pick things up but not necessarily see them through to the end. These are sort of the stereotypes of what it means to be cardinal. Initiating, forward energy, potentially a little bit more assertive. I really think of the key word underlying cardinal as influence. Welcome to Promethea Astrology. My name is Aleena and I am the astrologer for healers, creatives, and changemakers. Today we're talking about quadruplicity, also known as modalities in astrology. This is whether or not a zodiac sign is cardinal, fixed, or mutable. So it's one of the properties of the zodiac signs, just like gender, masculine or feminine, element, fire, water, air, earth, and then the quadruplicity are just these different properties of the zodiac signs. So what are the quadruplicities or modalities? They are either cardinal, fixed, or mutable. So every zodiac sign is one of these three things. It's called a quadruplicity because it divides the circle in four. If you made a shape that connected all of the signs with the same modality, it would be a square. So there's 4 cardinal signs, 4 fixed signs, and 4 mutable signs. So that's why even though there's 3 categories, it's the quadruplicity. The fact that these signs that share this modality, that share this property, make a square is significant. That geometry gives us a lot of the underlying symbolism behind what these different quadruplicities mean. So I'm going to go through and illustrate what each of these properties look like and how they manifest in the different zodiac signs that they are a part of. But know that there are positive and shadow sides to every symbol. So each of these different modalities will have things that it's good at and things that it's not as good at. And also, the most likely situation for you is that you are probably not just one of these things. Maybe even if your sun, moon, and rising are all cardinal signs, there's still 5 to 8 other planets, depending on who you ask, which have a different sign potentially. Maybe they're all in the same modality, but chances are you probably have some placements that are important that are not in one of these. So better not to think of yourself as, oh, I'm just a cardinal person, because you are probably many different versions of these things in different ways in different parts of your life. So besides being the shape of a square, really the thing that defines what this means is whether or not your zodiac sign is at the beginning, the middle, or the end of a season. So the cardinal signs are all the first trimester of that season. So the spring equinox, the fall equinox, the winter solstice, and the summer solstice, these will be the points in time that define the start of the cardinal signs. It's the beginning of a new season. Then the fixed signs are the middle of each season, and the mutable signs are the last third of the season as the season is changing to the next. Archetypally, you can kind of think of this as the beginning, middle, and end. Underneath of the cardinal, fixed, and mutable directions, it's really cardinal the beginning of a season, fixed the middle of a season, mutable the end of the season. So underneath of that seasonal aspect, we can really think about these things symbolically as the beginning, the middle, and the end. And what does it mean for someone to have qualities related to the beginning? Cardinal signs are more initiating, getting things started. They have the energy to get things off the ground from 0 to 1. The fixed signs, the middle of the season, this is someone or signs that are more stable, slower. They have the staying power, the integrity to sit and be with what is. Then the mutable signs at the end of the season, so this would be qualities of someone who is quite adaptable and changeable and go with the flow, and we're here but we're on our way there. We're transitioning into what's next. So better at adapting to the ever-changing reality that we are in. So I'll start out illustrating the cardinal signs and what it means to be cardinal and some different symbolic qualities that it embodies, and illustrate what this means by going through each of the cardinal signs in the zodiac. And some other things. So the way the geometry of the zodiac works out, there's a different element for each modality. So there is cardinal earth, cardinal water, cardinal fire, cardinal air. There is fixed earth, fixed water, fixed fire, fixed air, and there is mutable earth, mutable water, mutable fire, mutable air. And I think it's helpful to kind of illustrate what these qualities means by contrasting them, so we can deduce what cardinal means in a way by looking at each of its different manifestations and trying to figure out what they have in common. So we always start with cardinal. Cardinal is the beginning. Cardinal is getting things started. Cardinal is the first day of each season until the end of that third of the season. So Aries is our beginning of spring zodiac sign, cardinal fire. Then Cancer is our cardinal summer sign, the beginning of summer, the winter solstice. Then Libra is the fall equinox sign. And then Capricorn is the beginning of winter at the winter solstice. So cardinal being more initiating, getting things started, able to pick things up but not necessarily see them through to the end. These are sort of the stereotypes of what it means to be cardinal. Initiating, forward energy, potentially a little bit more assertive. I really think of the key word underlying cardinal as influence, but we'll see the different ways that that can look when you combine it with the different elements here. So what does cardinal fire look like, and how is it that Aries is cardinal? What does that mean? Well, it's not just that Aries is cardinal, but Aries is cardinal fire. So that is fire pushing forward. You can visualize the literal element of fire in the literal direction of moving forward in like a focused way. So you can kind of derive from there, that's almost like a gun or something, or fireworks, like when you're directionally shooting fire. So this is like the energy of Aries, which is the archetype of the warrior. Aries is the beginning of spring and really is also as a sign ruled by Mars. You should watch my video on Mars for a full kind of understanding of how Aries is a manifestation of Mars. But Mars is also our planet of aggression and the warrior and all of these things. So cardinal fire, Mars is going to be the hero, the person on the front lines, unafraid to go boldly into the unknown. And you can think of the spring equinox bursting forth new life from nothing. There was the seed that broke the soil and sought the sun, and this is what it means to be cardinal. And because it's Aries, not only the beginning of a season, but also the beginning of the zodiac. Aries is the head. We always start with Aries. Aries is the first. The spring is where we determine the beginning of the year in an astrological sense. We start with the spring equinox. So it's also the transition point from the previous year to the new year. The transition from Pisces to Aries is from kind of like the final evolution back into being the baby again, and then we go around, and that's the cycle that's being shifted there. So I think Aries has the most dramatic manifestation of cardinal. It's the first cardinal sign. Also fire, which is already quite explosive and dramatic and passionate as an element. And when I think about cardinality as how it shows up in a personality of maybe in a more day-to-day modern time context, these are people who are not afraid to speak their mind, not afraid to assert themselves into a situation. And because it's this assertive fire, the cardinal fire, that makes it particularly, fire as an element can be more prone towards aggression, anger, violence, and things like that, or physical energy. So that's the way in which Aries is influencing their environment. As a cardinal sign, it's like we're pushing things out, we're getting things started, but also moving them out. Almost like extroverted in a psychological sense, where you're able to kind of take your own, whatever that elemental quality is, and bring it into the external world. So when that's fire, that's more of this ability to bring in the anger, aggression, directive assertiveness, and put that out into the environment. So this can sometimes be very useful and sometimes can be less useful for Aries. This is a very noble and brave quality. when it is applied in an appropriate context, and it's also can be a little bit difficult to deal with when it comes up in situations where it's not really warranted. And then we can compare that to Cancer's cardinal water. So again, getting things started in the summer solstice, but because Cancer is a water sign, which has to do with the emotions, the intuition, healing, merging, empathy, compassion, all of those things. So the way in which Cancer is initiating, getting things started, putting forward, influencing is in this emotional realm, where Cancer is able to almost influence the emotions of people around them, which on a positive side can be incredibly healing when it is placed with integrity. The impulse to nurture and caretake and influence the space to be more relaxing and supportive. And it can also be applied in less constructive ways that can be even to damage people emotionally. You can also inflict emotional experiences on people that are extremely unpleasant and even toxic, you could say. So again, there's two sides to every coin. So the cardinal water has the superpower of initiating an emotional experience and influencing the environment in this intuitive, emotional, healing way. And then Aries is going to be doing that in more of like a physical energy, fire, directive, assertive, really creating energy out of something. That is what fire is. Fire is energy. And then Libra is cardinal air. So what does it mean to be able to initiate, put forth, influence the environment in an air type of way? Air is intellectual, social, playful, kind of cold and distant, more dry. So to influence in an air way, this is Libra as well, which is ruled by Venus. So Venus air is a little bit different than you might think of air normally, because Venus is all about beauty and embodiment and sensuality. So that's a little bit more earthly than air on her own, in her own context. So when you apply air to Venus, we get this aesthetic intelligence and this social intelligence. Venus is about romance, beauty, harmony, sensuality, pleasure, all of those things. So we take that and we turn it into an intelligence because it's an air sign. So what does it mean to be able to influence the environment with aesthetic and social intelligence? Well, because it's ruled by Venus and usually wanting to be towards peace and fairness, that can be just creating really lovely social environments to be in and being able to kind of keep harmony in social settings. It can also be in the form of interior design or home decor or architecture and things like that, where Libra has this real ability. You know, air is also kind of like space, so Libra has this real sense of like the aesthetics of space, which can be interior design, but also can show up as lighting sometimes for them. Some Libras are really like light artists. So those are the types of things that Libra is initiating and bringing forth into their environment and the things that they are likely to initiate in their day-to-day lives. And then we have Capricorn, cardinal Earth, lastly. So what does it mean for Earth to be cardinal, to be pushing Earth forward? I think of Capricorn as like raising mountains. We're erecting something. Capricorn as the Earth modality, the Earth cardinal sign, is more oriented towards what is in physical reality, the real world, the stuff, what is happening on the ground, what is practical and what makes sense. And so Capricorn is the superpower of creating physical structures or like practical things like businesses or getting projects started that are also, because it's ruled by Saturn, meant to last and like really serve a purpose in the long run. Saturn is Lord of time and also structure. So Capricorn is very oriented towards creating and resurrecting and building things that will stand the test of time to kind of leave their legacy and try to counteract the possible risk of scarcity. So Capricorn would be one to bring up and initiate something practical and long-lasting. That's what they're going to have the energy to initiate and get started. And Capricorn is actually opposite to Cancer. So even though they are both cardinal signs and they are both feminine, the water version versus the earth version of being cardinal in this axis, Capricorn is not going to be so good at initiating emotionally. That's the opposite of what Capricorn wants to do. Cancer is the one who wants to be initiating things emotionally. So Cancer is not as likely to get excited about building a business or like just doing something that makes sense and is practical. For the long term, that's not what Cancer is going to want to think about and bring into the world. So even though all of these signs are cardinal, the things that they have the energy to bring into the world and initiate with and come into existence are different. And that can be partially deduced through the element that is associated with them, and then also the planetary ruler. And those are 3 of the 5 big things that tell us the different qualities or properties of the zodiac signs. So there's also the symbol and the gender. So hopefully going through those different elements and looking at how cardinal shows up in those different elements can kind of help clarify what it means to be cardinal. And then you can also apply the shortcomings of being cardinal to each of those things. So the shortcoming of being cardinal is that you might not always see things through. So for instance, for the cardinal fire version, not seeing things through, what does that look like? I don't know, embarking on an epic journey that you didn't quite think all the way through to the end and maybe lose steam for at some point. That's kind of like the Aries version of that. Could also just be things related to your physical energy, or if it's your Aries sun, then it could be more like ideas. If it's an Aries moon, maybe more like the body. So it would depend on what your Aries placement is, how you would interpret this. But the shortcoming is essentially whatever it is that you have that passion and drive for initially doesn't always sustain you through to the end of what that is. Fire as the passion. For Cancer, the way this can look is initiating that emotional experience. Like, you know that you can create an emotional experience for someone, whether you want that to be healing and supportive, or maybe you want it to be kind of vengeful or vindictive. You know, I'm not saying which way you can direct those emotional things, but whatever that emotional experience is that you're bringing into your environment, into your relationships, might not be one that you carry all the way through or thought through all the way at the beginning. So maybe you might think, oh, I'm going to heal this person. This is someone that I can nurture to wholeness, and then find out partway through that they were not who you thought they were. And maybe you jumped to that a little quickly, and maybe you're not going to see that one through. Maybe that was not the case. Maybe that's not for you to take care of. And on the other end of things, sometimes you might have an emotional reaction that is compulsing you to project that experience onto the people around you in your relationships, but maybe you could have sat with it a little bit longer, and maybe it wasn't really theirs to process. Maybe that was yours to process and not actually an issue that they had at all. So that's sort of the shadow side and the light side of the challenges with cardinal water, and the ways that they might not see things through to the end in an emotional way. The way that you feel about someone initially may not be actually your feeling for the long haul, and you might not see that through. And then Libra, what does it look like to not follow through in a cardinal air way? Well, one of the main drawbacks of Libra is this indecisiveness they sometimes struggle with, where because there's this orientation towards fairness and harmony, the Venus things, but it's also very mental, sometimes it can be hard to try to really completely, logically, mentally deduce what is the best thing, because you can still consider, oh, what about this, and weigh the pros and cons, and how can you ever know for sure what the right thing to do is, and that gets a little bit indecisive. So that can be the thing that sometimes slows down Libra in their cardinal air journeys. So they might have enthusiasm for something, but then have trouble deciding. Or Libra might be quick to initiate social experiences that they then find themselves not really wanting to carry through all the way, perhaps over applying themselves socially or creatively and then not finding the follow through within themselves sometimes. And then lastly, to speak to the square quality of the quadruplicity, the way that each of these signs that share the same modality will have a square form between them. That geometry speaks to the underlying quality of each quadruplicity as well. So the square is a challenging aspect in astrology, and signs that share the same modality will all either be square or opposite to each other. And the square and the opposition are the two most challenging aspects in astrology. So the opposite is the number one hardest. It's like the Harry Potter wands, Voldemort and Harry, one of us is going to die. There's no way to resolve this. And then the square is like, this is really painful and there's a lot of friction here, but maybe ultimately we might be able to move forward and make something out of this, that this could be a generative struggle, like this tension could create something. So they're very powerful directions. And in traditional texts, the square is sort of like the most active aspect. This is the most like energetic, you could say. When you divide something into four, that's how we get like the cardinal directions. This is how we orient ourselves. We think of things in four ways: up and down, left and right. That is the axis that we use in math and the geometry in the horizon that we see in front of us. So it's like really planting a stake and setting the course. It's the structure. And because of that, in traditional astrology, like the points that divide the birth chart in four, the MC, the IC, the ascendant and descendant, the eastern and western horizon versus what is directly above and directly underneath of you. Those were called pivotal points and are said to be more energetic points on the chart. And they are square to each other in this configuration, generally, usually, most of the time, not always. So although these signs see each other, that's what it's called when signs are aspecting each other, or when anything is aspecting anything. The literal etymology is to witness. So when these signs, these four signs that share the same quadruplicity, they see each other, but the differences are very stark still. It's like the cardinality in me sees the cardinality in you, but I don't necessarily like it. So, like I was explaining with Cancer and Capricorn, it's like, yes, we're both cardinal, but the way that you want to be cardinal repulses me, and the way that you want to be cardinal repulses me, or it just doesn't make any sense to me, or I don't understand, is the opposite of what I would do. So it's very tense, and it's like, okay, I see that you're trying to make things happen, but I don't like the way that you're doing it. And when it's opposite, that becomes even more challenging. And then when they're square, that can be potentially more generative. So Cancer, Capricorn, that's going to be hard to figure out. Aries, Libra, that's going to be hard to figure each other out. But when they're square to each other, so Libra Capricorn or Libra Cancer, that will be easier to see each other. And then on the other side, Aries, Cancer, Aries, Capricorn, they'll be able to see each other and they'll recognize the differences, but it might be a little bit more generative. So you can think of things a little bit with synastry like that. But again, none of us are just one of these things, but it's like the Capricorn part of you will struggle with the Cancer part of them. And that's not like the totality of who they are, but your ability to kind of break things down and recognize them for their components like this can be extremely helpful and enlightening for your daily experience. So that is all that I have for you about the cardinal signs today and what it means to be cardinal. I would so appreciate if you would subscribe to me here. That would help me so much to reach more people. And if you would like to book a consultation with me, I do also offer those. So you can head to the link in my description to learn more about the types of conversations I have and how they might transform you. I'm also a jeweler, so you can check out the jewelry that I make in the link below as well. And let me know if you have any questions about anything. I genuinely love talking about astrology and will reply to the comments. And you can also follow me on Instagram at Promethea_astrology over there as well if you like, especially if you're in Philly and want to come to a local workshop that I'm hosting. That'd be fun. Thank you. Wishing you peace and health.